Everyone's watching and kind of looking around at what the quarterbacks are going to do. Like once Matthew Stafford decided to go back to LA for whatever the amount was and whatever the reasoning was or all that stuff that played out, once he went back, it was like, all right, now we'll get down to who's going to end up where, what makes the most sense, who's going to be a bridge quarterback, what team's thinking about taking a quarterback in the draft. Like everything's going to start to shake out here. And so the move yesterday in the NFL that kind of surprised some people was the Geno Smith trade from the Seahawks to the Raiders. And initially, like, oh, wow, that's interesting, because we were looking at all these free agents that they could possibly sign. Instead, they go out, they trade a third-round pick, and they bring back Geno Smith to reunite with Pete Carroll. And then once you see the deal get done and you take a step back, you kind of realize, oh, yeah, that makes some sense. Pete Carroll loves Geno Smith and vice versa. Geno Smith has credited Pete Carroll for giving him his confidence back. He signed a bunch of one-year deals just to stay in Seattle to be with Pete Carroll. Like, those two guys love each other. So it makes sense from that standpoint. Pete Carroll looks at this and says, look, if we can't get a Matthew Stafford and we strike out there and we're not totally sure sitting with the sixth pick who's going to be there at quarterback, maybe Shedeur Sanders will be there, maybe, like, we don't know. But if we're not totally confident, at least let me go with somebody I trust if this is, in fact, my last opportunity to be a coach in the NFL. Totally get it. It makes sense. You would like some familiarity if you were going to pursue this, especially if you're taking over a place that needs work in a division with those quarterbacks. So from that standpoint, it makes a hell of a lot of sense for Pete Carroll, Geno Smith in Las Vegas to do this. There's been some talks. They're going to work on some sort of a short-term contract extension. Geno's got 1 year left on his deal. So it all, once you take a step back, makes some sense. Here's what else this does. It makes you wonder and ask the question out loud. What does this say about Russell Wilson? Because, I don't know, maybe I must have missed a few years there, but it seems like Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll did some good things together. I don't know, I mean, it seems like those two went to a couple of Super Bowls, won a Super Bowl. It feels like, and by the way, Russell Wilson, you can have, without giving away a draft pick, he's a free agent. You could, that is a possibility. Like, you can have Russell Wilson, and there's been some, hey, listen, they've mended fences. They've been, okay. So what happened? And I look at this and I go, it's kind of like the stages after a breakup that could lead to a possible getting back together situation. Everybody kind of goes through, like when you go through a breakup, there's like the initial feeling, almost like a shock, especially when you've been together a long time. It's like, oh boy, like, man, what happened? The emotions are raw. Like all of a sudden you've got to fill this void and there's all this time on your hands and you're angry. And then after a while, you start to feel maybe a little bit lonely, and maybe you're uncomfortable because you're not comfortable with not having them by your side. So you start to romanticize all the good times and you forget about all the bad times. And you start to think, and all of a sudden, all the good stuff, and then everything starts to settle down. And then the moment comes where it's like, hey, there's an opportunity here. Wounds have healed. What do you say? Why don't we give this another try? And it's at that moment where you have a decision to make. What stuck with you the most? The good times that you romanticized when you were lonely, or the bad times that you thought about when you were angry? And I just wonder if Pete Carroll was looking at this whole thing going, yeah, I'm good. I'm good here. I'll go with Geno Smith. I'll choose Geno Smith over Russell Wilson, who I won a Super Bowl with. Like, pinnacle of my NFL career was with that guy, and I'll take the other one who I had less success with. And in fact, the other one who was there when I was told my services were no longer needed in Seattle. Yeah, I'll go with that guy instead. It does say a lot about where Russell Wilson's reputation is in the NFL, that somebody who would know him and had as much success with a quarterback, arguably those two guys made each other Hall of Famers, and he's going, nah, I'm good. I'll take the other one. And the pushback would be, oh, well, listen, I mean, it's age. It's got to be an age thing. You know, Russell Wilson's older. Dude, he's less than 2 years older than Geno Smith. Like, we're not talking about, like, you know, one guy's 36 and the other's in his mid-20s. This isn't a Russell Wilson, Justin Fields thing. Geno Smith is 34. Like, so we could sit here and, like, try and, like, there's a 2-year age difference. Yeah, but, you know, what about the production last year? Okay. It's like, let's not pretend that Geno Smith was great last year. Like, you could argue those two. Like, from a turnover standpoint, and I get it, Russ played less games, not even arguable. From a turnover, like, Geno Smith was like third in the NFL in picks last. Like, let's not pretend like he had this, like, fantastic year and he blew away the league and there was an argument about, oh, he wants $60 million. Like, no, like, this says as much about how Pete Carroll feels about the options out there, one of which being Russell Wilson, as it does how he feels about Geno Smith. And so when you start to look at all the different landing spots, you know what we're hearing a lot of? Hey, what about Aaron Rodgers? Where does this leave him? Oh, yeah. Hey, what about Sam Darnold? Where does this, Sam Darnold's option? Yeah, totally. Like, you're even hearing Daniel Jones. Hey, Daniel Jones has got options out there. Hey, what about Justin Fields? Like, Pittsburgh. Like, there's some other possibilities out there. Like, what about him? You know what you're not hearing a lot of? Hey, what does this mean for Russell Wilson? And I don't know the guy. I don't think I shook his hand once at a Super Bowl media center gathering when he was going to be a guest for something. Like, maybe, I don't know. Never had a conversation with him. Can't speak about how he is as a person. I have no idea. All I know is this. There seems to be a common theme around the NFL. Like, it didn't work in Seattle. It went to Denver. That was a disaster. Complete disaster. And again, we're not trying to dig into whatever his personal preferences are, to each their own. Personally, when my wife and I bought our place, like, I wasn't really interested in a 4-bedroom, 12-crap closet home. I wasn't. Like, triple the bathroom to bedroom feels odd. But again, to each their own. I have no idea. Like, maybe, hey, listen, I'm on a water fast. I got to get there quick. I need options. Okay. I mean, 4-bedroom, 5-bath, I could totally understand. 12, that's a bit much. Parking space, own office, all. But, like, now we're looking at, all right, so it didn't work in Seattle and it ended on bad terms. Got it. Denver was a disaster. It ended on bad terms. Got it. What about Pittsburgh? Yeah, we're good. Well, we'd rather have Justin Fields back. Yeah, but Russell Wilson was better. We're okay here. Okay, so now that's 3 different examples of things didn't end all that good and didn't end all that right. And it's not so much about the production as it is, Arthur Smith and him didn't really get along, reportedly. They played nice publicly, but didn't really get along. Okay. And so now there's an option to reunite with somebody you had the most success in your NFL career with, and vice versa for Pete Carroll. And he says, now we're good here. I'll go with the other guy. It just makes you wonder what we're talking about here. A guy who was on a Hall of Fame trajectory and he's going to be looking at a fourth team in 5 years. Kind of wild. You don't see this a lot unless there's something more to the story. Jonas Knox here, Fox Sports Radio, at the Jonas Knox on X, at the Jonas Knox on X, and you can hang out with us as always on the iHeartRadio app.